Masechet Nedarim Daf Ayin Dalid. We're going to be able to dip back into Yevamot today, and together with all the complexities of that Masechet, and talking about whether a Yavam can annul the vows of a Yevamah before he actually does Yibum, while she is awaiting that Yibum. So she is called a Shomeret Yavam. This is a woman whose husband died, and she's waiting for one or more of her surviving brothers to do Yibum, or Chalitza. Ben liyavam ehad ben lishnei Yavamin. Rabbi Eliezer omer yafer. We're going to have three opinions. The first of Rabbi Eliezer says whether there is only one surviving brother or two surviving brothers. When there's one surviving brother, then he's the only one that could do Yibum or Chalitza. When there's two surviving brothers, then you never know which one. Let's say we go with Yibum. You never know which one is going to do Yibum. Could be brother A, could be brother B. Nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer says either one can nullify her vows. All right, so Rabbi Eliezer is going to require some explanation because how could it be? She is not, this zikah, we're going to call it. That's the obligation, the responsibility of a surviving brother to marry the widow, to do Yibum on the widow is a zikah. So it's not quite a marriage, but it is a connection. It's a responsibility to marry. But if there's two brothers and we don't know which one's going to do it, yet either one can nullify the vows. So that's very interesting of Rabbi Eliezer. We're going to discuss it further. Rabbi Yoshua omer lehad aval lo d'shnayim. Rabbi Yoshua says, no, if there's only one surviving brother, then he can nullify her vow. Because we know he will be the one to do Yibum, right? Nobody else could do it. Sure, he could do Chalitza too. But at this point, there is a zikah, he has the responsibility, and only he has the responsibility, and therefore that is sufficient to give him authority to nullify her vows. Rabbi Akiva omer lo le'echad ve'lo d'shnayim. Rabbi Akiva says, sorry, it doesn't matter if there's one or two or 100 surviving brothers, makes no difference. Even if there's only one, the zikah, that connection, is not strong enough. It's not like a marriage at all. Who knows what he's going to do? He might do chalitza. They're not married, and he cannot nullify her vows. All right, those are the three basic opinions. We're going to see throughout the daf. We're going to keep going and giving further and further explanations for them. So it's important to have all these three opinions straight. Now, within the Mishnah already, there's a discussion. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Ma'im isha shekanahu la'asmo, harehu mefer nedareha. Rabbi Eliezer is going to make a kal vachomer. A wife who a person acquires for himself, he can nullify her vows, meaning through kiddushin. If she's a na'ara, if she's young, then a husband, a groom, can nullify her vows along with the father. And so, just kiddushin alone that he does by himself, that a person does of his own free will, gives him the authority to nullify vows. Isha shiknula min hashamayim enodin shefer nedareha. If so, then a woman who is given to him, who he acquires from heaven, meaning no, he didn't do anything. The yavam is sitting at home, and one day his brother dies, and automatically his brother's wife, if he has no kids, becomes a yevama and he has an obligation. Now, so this is done from heaven. He didn't do anything. So if something is done from heaven, isn't that stronger than a human action? Right? A heavenly action should be stronger than a human action. So in this case, since the woman is acquired, she becomes acquired to him from heaven, all the more so that should be a stronger case, and he should be able to nullify her vows. Right? Notice we're not comparing full marriage nisuin, because that for sure full marriage nisuin would be like after do yibum, then it's a full marriage. But we're comparing something that is similar, the kiddushin, which does give a husband the right, together with the father, if she's a 12-year-old. Then also, and so all the more so if it's given to him from heaven. That's Rabbi Eliezer's statement. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, lo imamat bisha shekanahu la'asmo shenacharim ba'reshut. Rabbi Akiva says, no, your kal vachomer does not work, because when a person acquires a woman on his own through regular kiddushin, then nobody else has a right to marry her. That's the law. If I don't go and give a coin to a woman, and she is single, I said, so now she has kiddushin to me. If somebody else goes and gives her a coin, even if it's more money, doesn't work, right? There's only one kiddushin, and no one else has any right to her. So there, it makes sense that the groom will have a right to nullify that wife's vows together with the father. But you cannot compare that to a woman who is given to a man from heaven because the brother died, where others do have a right to her. What others? We're talking about the other brothers. If there's more than one brother, then brother A can do the boom, brother B can do the boom. So even though, because the person dies, now by heaven, she is acquired to one of them, but it's not exclusive, right? Because although one can do it, the other one can go and do it first. Either one can, and so you can't compare that to kiddushin, where it's one and whoever does kiddushin, that's it. No one else can do it. Here, other people can do it, so it's not as strong of a connection, and so that's why the nullification of the vow should not work for a yavam. Okay, that is what Rabbi Akiva said in order to exclude Rabbi Eliezer. But Rabbi Yoshua, he was the middle opinion. Amar lo Rabbi Yoshua, Akiva devarecha b'shnei yevamin. Ma ata meshiv al yavam echad. It says, so Rabbi Yoshua tells Akiva, your rejection of Rabbi Eliezer would only apply in a case where there were two surviving brothers, and that's where you would say, the acquisition from heaven is not full because one of them, either one, can do it. It's not an exclusive acquisition. So, and that's how you rejected Rabbi Eliezer. But that doesn't reject my opinion, because Rabbi Yoshua says if there's only one surviving brother, then that's exclusive. So that makes it strong. That zikah is like marriage and should be nullification. Rabbi Akiva, what do you have to say about the case when there's only one? How come Rabbi Akiva, you say even if there's only one surviving brother, he cannot nullify it? Amar lo, ena yavama gemura leyavam keshem sha'arusa gemura leisha. And Rabbi Akiva says, I disagree with you also, Rabbi Yoshua, for a different reason, which is that the Yavama is not fully married to the Yavam like an Arusa is to her husband. And we could tell this based on the punishment that she would get if she does go and is with somebody else. If she's an Arusa, then first of all, no one else can do Kiddushin. Second of all, if someone else sleeps with her, then that would be Sikila. Right? That's why we don't like to call Arusa just engaged, because in popular parlance, just engaged means, okay, you could break it off. There's no halachic value of what we call today engagement. But this is kind of engagement, but it has almost the same consequences as marriage. She would get sikila if she committed adultery, and you'd need a get. So that does create a full bond that is, if broken, if committed, if not faithful, gets sikila. So therefore, it makes sense that the husband should be able to nullify the vow. But a yavama is not so. If a yavama goes and sleeps with somebody else, then it's only a lav. There's no sikila. And in fact, if someone would go and do kiddushin with her, although not permitted, the kiddushin would work. And so you can't compare the two. Even if there's only one yavam, that yavam's hold over her is much weaker than that of a husband over his arusa. Okay, so that's Rabbi Akiva's response to Rabbi Yoshua. All right, now we're going to analyze further. Bishlama Rabbi Akiva savad en zika. We understand Rabbi Akiva, he thinks that that responsibility of a surviving brother of a yavam to do yibum with the yavama is not a substantial connection, right? That zikah is not a zikah, and therefore it is a responsibility, but it doesn't make them as if they're married, and therefore just means that you have to go do something before she can go and marry somebody else in a permitted way, but they're not married, and therefore no possibility of any yavam, even one yavam, to nullify. Good, we got that. Rabbi Yoshua Savad Yeshlika. Rabbi Yoshua says, yes, there is a connection. The connection between the yavam and the yavama is very substantial and is almost like marriage. It's equivalent to a kiddushin. In many ways, not always, but in some ways, and it's sufficient. It's strong enough that the yavam can nullify the vows as long as there's only one yavam and you know who it's going to be. Fine, we got that right. This is a big machloket back in Masechet Yevamot. Yeshika and Sika. So fine, they can take one of the two positions. Ela Rabbi Eliezer, my tameh yeshika and berera. According to Rabbi Eliezer, why does he think that even when there are two surviving brothers, well, how come either of them can nullify the vows? Even if you say that a zikah is substantial, but it hasn't been decided yet which of them are going to be the future husband. Whoever does yibum first, they will be the future husband, but that's not decided yet. So now, how could they nullify now, and only after one of them does yibum, then retroactively we'll know which one it is. But at this point, you can't allow that to happen because it has not yet been decided. So how is Rabbi Eliezer going to explain this? Can either of them really just go and nullify their vows? And what if the other one goes ahead and does marriage and does the yibum? Okay, so that's the big question, and here's the answer. Amar Rabbi Ameh, kegon she'asa ba ma'amad. We're talking about a case where one of the surviving brothers, let's call him brother A, did ma'amad. Ma'amad is an equivalent of kiddushin, but for yavam and yavama. It's a D'Rabbanan institution. The rabbis looked at this and said, how's it going to work? The brother dies, and then the surviving brother, what does he do? He just has marital relations with her without anything coming before. It's not very respectful to just go straight into that act, right? It's much nicer, more polite, more respectful to follow a similar procedure to regular marriage. Just like regular marriage, first you do kiddushin, right? You get engaged, you have a process, and only then you do nisuin, and he takes her into his home, right? That's a nicer way, more romantic. So too, the rabbi said, we should do this for Yavam and Yavama also, and before the Yavam does Yibum, he should give her a ring, a coin, something of value, right? And do a similar thing, right? You now are designated to me. I'm going to be the one to do Yibum, and so that way, even if there is another brother or many other brothers, Brother A, right, whichever it is, Brother A says, I'm going to be the one. So the B'ameh says, we're talking about a case where one of the brothers did this ma'amar, and by doing so, his connection to her is stronger than that of any of the other brothers. And since he is now designated to do the yibum, that is like kiddushin, and just like with kiddushin, the husband can annul the vow. So too, the brother A that does the ma'amad, he can annul the vow, and so that we don't have a problem of later on it turns out it was the different brother. Right now we know it was ma'amad. Good. Now, V'Rabbi Eliezer Sabad la kibet Shammai Damre Ma'amar Koneh Kinyan Gamur. We need the further assumption in order for this statement, for the B'ameh's explanation to work, that Rabbi Eliezer has to follow Bet Shammai. Well, okay, what could you do? Rabbi Eliezer does often follow Bet Shammai. This is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkinos, who we know often taught these older traditions, even if the later rabbis were changed and were against it. He's the one of the Avan Avachnai story, and sometimes yes, he did follow Bet Shammai, so this could very well be. And Bet Shammai said the Ma'amar makes a full-fledged acquisition like Kiddushin. So this really will work for Rabbi Eliezer because he thinks that. But Bet Hillel, by the way, does not think that Ma'amar makes a full-fledged Kiddushin, and so this would only work for Bet Shammai. Good. Now, according to the B'ameh, we still want to explain all three opinions in the Mishnah under this assumption, right? It shouldn't just be that they should all three Tanaim must be arguing on the same case. So let's explain the other two, assuming that, yes, one of the brothers did ma'amad. Rabbi Yoshua still thinks, even though one did ma'amad, nevertheless, it's only true that the Avam can annul the vow if there's only one surviving brother, not if there's two surviving brothers. Why? Because after all, even if brother A did ma'amad, brother B can always jump the gun and do bi'ah, do yibum. And then brother A is no longer is out of the picture. Or if brother A does ma'amad and brother B gives her a get, giving her a get makes the Yavama not eligible to do Yibum even with brother A, with any of the brothers. Once you get a get, it's a separation. They still need Chalitza because the get is not sufficient. But the get nullifies that Ma'amad. So you see, brother B can nullify the Ma'amad of brother A either through Bi'ah or through a get. So this is actually not like Kiddushin. If someone does Kiddushin with a woman, then that's it. If someone else gives her a get, it's not going to affect anybody, right? Or if someone else does Bi'ah, well, they're going to get Sikila, but, right, it doesn't undo the Kiddushin. And so, according to the Yoshua, doing Ma'amad is not strong enough to, when there's two brothers, then doing Ma'amad is not strong enough because the other brother can always go ahead and ruin that Ma'amad. That's what Rabbi Yoshua sticks to his position. Even if one, it doesn't matter. If you do Ma'amad, still is only true with one brother, not with two. But Rabbi Akiba Sabar and Zika, and Rabbi Akiba, he'll say that it does not make a substantial bond at all. The whole Zika that a husband has to his wife, that a Yavam has to Yavama, is not substantial. And even if you do Ma'amar, he'll follow Bet Hillel, who says that it does not make a full connection, and therefore it's still insufficient. Even if there's only one husband, that connection is not strong enough at all for him to annul the vow. Rabbi Yoshua says it is strong enough. It's just not that if there's two brothers, then since we don't know which one it is, and even Mama won't help, so two brothers cannot do it. One brother can. Rabbi Akiba says even one brother cannot. Okay, good. So now we have the answer of Rabbi Ameh, that it's talking about a case where one of the brothers, if there's two, does ma'amad. Now we're going to come back and ask a couple of questions against Rabbi Ameh. We will answer them. But first, we want to clarify this according to a different Amorah, or Rabbi El-Azar. This is not Rabbi Eliezer, the Tanai we're just talking about, but an Amorah Rabbi El-Azar, the Amar. Ma'amad Bet Shammai en kone ela lidchot besara ma'ika le'me'amad. Rabbi El-Azar's interpretation of Bet Shammai when someone does Ma'amad is that this does not create a stronger bond between the Yavam and Yavama. And when you do Ma'amad, all that does is allow a co-wife, right? If the Yavama, the brother who died had two wives. Okay, and so one of the brothers does Ma'amad with one of the wives. All that does is it allows that brother who did the Ma'amad, he could marry a co-wife's relative, like the co-wife's sister. Normally, if someone's a Yavam and Yavama, then since he has a Zikah, so he cannot marry even the relatives of his sister-in-law. But because he did Ma'amad with one of the wives, so then the other wives' relatives are free to go. That's all it does, but it does not create any stronger connection between the Yavam and Yavama. And according to that, Rabbi Elazar's opinion, how are we going to explain the position of Rabbi Eliezer? If there's two surviving brothers, even if one does Ma'amad, that's not going to help. They both have an equal connection to her, so how can both of them go ahead and nullify it when either of them may be the one to do Yibum? And the answer is Hachama Kenan Kedron Shamad Bedin V'Tchayeb La Mezonot. We're talking about a case where the Yavam was waiting around for a long time, and she brought him to court and says, hey, he's got to come and do Yibum already. It's been too long. And the court says, hey, you have to do Yibum, right? Brother A, you have to do Yibum, and because you didn't do it yet, you have to pay her sustenance. You have to pay for her food. So now, since whichever of the brothers she brought to court, he's the one that now has to give her sustenance. Now he can also nullify the vow. Why? Even though there is no connection, just because he has to pay her sustenance, that doesn't make them any more married. But it will help for vows, because we saw this in the name of Rava. We already saw the statement quoted before. It's a very useful statement that says any time woman makes a vow, if she has a Baal, a husband, then she's going to make it her vow contingent on her husband agreeing to it. And in this case, even though she doesn't have a husband, not a full husband anyway, but she does have a Yavam, and the Yavam is providing for her, so she will have in mind, he's providing for me, and therefore she is including in her vow a unstated condition that would only be true if he agrees to it, and that's why that brother would have the possibility of annulling it. Okay, good. So we explained the Mishnah even for the be Elazar, Elazar's understanding of Bet Shammai, and now we go back to the be Ameh. Tenan, Amar be Eliezer. So now we're going to quote the conversation in our very Mishnah and ask how the Bi Ameh is going to explain it. In that Mishnah, the Bi Eliezer defended his position that even if there's two surviving brothers, they can nullify it. Uma'im isha, and because one does ma'amah, so he can nullify it. Uma'im isha shekana latzmo, harehu mefer nedareha, isha sheknu lo min hashamayim en odin shemefer nedareha. His argument was, if a woman if a man acquires a woman himself through regular kiddushin, he can undo a vow. So if it's done by heaven, then that's stronger. He should be able to. Hold on to Bi Ameh. You said that this only applies, our whole Mishnah only applies in the case where one of the brothers did ma'amar. And if he did ma'amad, that means he acquired her for himself. So that's the same as a regular kiddushin. He's doing it for himself. And the answer is shekana al le'atzmo al yedei shamam. You're right, he did do something himself, but first she was acquired to him by means of heaven. Right? There's a double acquisition. When the brother dies, that's an act of heaven, and so now he already has the surviving brother. Both of them have a zikat to her. That's min hashamayim. That's going to be very strong. In addition to that, one of the brothers does a ma'amad. Yes, he does that himself, but that's already on the foundation of the shamayim one, and so that's what Rabbi Eliezer meant when he said this one is min hashamayim, means mishamayim, in addition to the ma'amad that he also does. All right, good. Now, so Rabbi Ameh solved that. Now, another question about the Bi Ameh. Tifshot be'ayed Abba. The Bi Ameh, if it's true that what you say, that this is talking about a case when one of the brothers does ma'amad, then we would have been able to answer this question of Rabbah. And when we discussed this question of Rabbah, we didn't have an answer. So how could you be right? Okay, so what's the question of Rabbah that we didn't have an answer to, that now we would have an answer to? It's interesting. This is a problem that we would have an answer. It's a problem because with the fact that we didn't have an answer before means that we didn't agree with Rabbi Ameh. Okay, anyway, so we would be able to answer this question. Ma'amad le Bet Shammai, erusin oseh or nisuin oseh? We know that according to Bet Shammai, doing a ma'amad is very strong, but how strong? Does it raise it to a level like erusin, or even raise it to a level of nisuin? That was the question that we discussed, and we didn't have an answer. But if the Bi Ameh is right, then we should have brought an answer from our Mishnah. Tifshot nisuin oseh. The Edusino se hatenan na'ara me'orasa biha ba'ala mefirin nedareha. It must be that it raises it to level of nisuin, and that's why this yavam alone can nullify her vow. Because if it was only Erusin, then, well, if it's only Erusin, a groom does not have the full right to nullify his vow, her vow without the father, right? If it's only Nadam Me'orasa, only Erusin, then you need the father and the husband to undo the vow. And we don't say, in our Mishnah doesn't say the father also. It must be that he does it alone, and therefore, how does he do it alone? Because doing Ma'amad is like nisuin. So, but we don't answer that. So, to be ameh, how come we wouldn't bring this Mishnah to answer that question according to you? And the answer is Amar Yafa Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak Ma Yafer Yafer b'shutafut. Rab Nachman says, yeah, this is what the Mishnah means. It didn't specify explicitly the father, but when it says that the yavam can nullify the vow of the yavama, it means in partnership with the father, of course. And so therefore, it could very well be that it raises it only, the ma'amad raises the zikah only to a level of kiddushin and not necessarily to nisuin. And so even the B'yameh can explain why we did not bring this as a proof to answer the question of Rabbah. All right, now that we challenged Rabbi Ameh and solved those challenges, now we're actually going to support him that Ma'amad is a key ingredient in this Mishnah. We're supporting it from a long baraita, that this long baraita is very similar, is parallel to our Mishnah. It brings the three opinions and a conversation between them. And within the conversation between them, it's going to mention Ma'amad. And so this baraita is clarifying and spelling out more than our Mishnah. And it's clear it is talking about Ma'amad. So to be Ameh is not just making this up out of nowhere. He has good support from a Tanaitic source. Tanyana mehachi kida bi Ameh shomeret yavam ben yavam echad ben shnei ben Rabbi Eliezer omer yafer. Is exactly the same as the Mishnah. A woman who's waiting to do Yibum, whether there's one or two surviving brothers, they either one can nullify her vows, but it'll be the one who does ma'amad. The one who does ma'amad of those two, either one can do ma'amad, but only the one who does ma'amad will be able to nullify the brother, to nullify the vow. But they can do it even though there's another surviving brother. That's a Eliezer. Only if there's one surviving brother. So it's exclusive. That makes it stronger. Rabbi Akiba says, no, sorry, there's no zikah, and no yavam cannot nullify the vow. It's not as strong as marriage, not even if there's only one brother. Now, Amar Rabbi Eliezer is going to explain his opinion. ומה אם אישה שאין לו חלק בה עד שלא תבוא לרשותו, משבת לרשותו נגמרה לו, אישה שיש לו חלק עד שלא תבוא לרשותו, משבת לרשותו אינו דין שתגמור לו. Rabbi Eliezer reasons, if in a regular case of a regular man and a woman who have not related to each other at all, and she'en lo chelek ba, before he does kiddushin, so they have no relationship before the kiddushin, yet once this man gives her a ring, does kiddushin, then she is fully under his jurisdiction, and he can annul her vows, again with the father, we always have to say that. So if that's true, when there was no prior relationship, and kiddushin alone makes it full, isha sheyesh lo chelek ad shelo tavo l'shuto, then a woman where there is already some amount of jurisdiction, meaning a yavam and yavama, where he already has some connection to her, then when he does ma'amad, mishabat l'shuto, then that should be even stronger, that should be full. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, right? When you start from scratch, and you do just kiddushin, and now he can annul her vows when they already have a relationship. And this means even if there's two brothers, so there's already a connection, and now one of the brothers does ma'amad and builds even more on that foundation. Shouldn't that be even stronger? Okay, the Eliezer makes sense. Notice that we explained, right? Mishabat l'shoto means something else. It's not talking about yibum, if you do yibum, they're fully married. We're not talking about that, right? It has to be a case where they already are yavam and yavama, and they're doing something extra. What is that extra thing? It's got to be ma'amad. Okay, we're going to explicitly mention ma'amad in a second, right? But even here, as the Gemara is going to point out in a minute, this is assuming ma'amad. Okay. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, lo im amarta b'isha shekanahu le'atzmo, shekeshem she'en lo chelek ba, kach en la'acherim chelek ba. Rabbi Akiva says you can't compare the cases in a case of a regular man and woman who are not related at all. And before the kiddushin, just like this particular man has no authority over her, so too kach en la'acherim, no one else has any authority over her either. She is an independent person, and so that's case one. That's why, because she has no connection to anyone, if I go and do kiddushin with her, then I can nullify her vows. That's not the same as tomar b'isha sheiknu lo min hashamayim shekeshem sheyesh lo chelek ima chelek kach yesh la'acherim chelek ba. Whereas when it's done by heaven, meaning a yibum case, just like one guy has authority over her, so too there are others. The other brothers all have authority over her. And so that's not the same. So because then there's when heaven makes her acquired, when the boom kicks in, when the brother dies, since there's multiple people that now have jurisdiction over her, so that actually weakens the one who does ma'amad, because there's already other people that have a claim, right? They have a connection to her. So now this one guy, his extra act is only a little bit of an extra act, and is not going to kick out all of the others. So that's why the Akiva says, Kiddushin is actually, regular Kiddushin is stronger, because there, no one else has any access to her, and I alone have exclusive access. That's a strong bond. And in Yibum, everyone has a weak access to her, so if I make mine a little stronger, but everybody else still has, all the other brothers still have that weak access, and so that makes a bond that is not strong enough to nullify marriages. That's Rabbi Akiva's counter to Rabbi Eliezer. Amar lo Rabbi Yoshua Akiva, devarecha b'shnei yavimim, ma ata meshiv al yavam echad. Rabbi Yoshua says, Rabbi Akiva, I like that you disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, right? But your disagreement only rejects Rabbi Eliezer when there are many yavamim. That's when you can say, when she falls to him from heaven, then there's many brothers, and each of them has access, some authority over her. But what would you say to me? Because I think that I agree with you when there's two brothers, but when there's one brother, I say that, then that's a strong connection, right? That should be even stronger. Now you have Mina Shamayim is giving him exclusive zikah, and in addition to that, ma'amad also. So for sure, that should be very strong. So you have nothing to say to me. Rabbi Yoshua says, Amar lo, Rabbi Akiva says, I do. Kilum chilaknu al yavam echad v'al shnei yavamin, ben she'asa ba'ma'amad, ben she'lo asa ba'ma'amad. Rabbi Akiva is like, I only said that answer to Rabbi Eliezer, but that's not the real reason. I think that there's no difference between one or two yavamim, and there's no difference between whether you do ma'amad or don't do ma'amad. Uchsha devarim ken nedarim. And how do I know that even one yavam and even doing ma'amad is not strong enough? Compare it to other aspects of this connection. If someone does kiddushin to a single woman, then that makes a bond strong enough that she would get sikila if she commits adultery. Not true. That's not so with a yavam and yavama. If she goes and sleeps with somebody else, it's just a love. If someone else would do kiddushin with her, it would work. Not so for a single woman who does kiddushin. So just look at the comparison for other laws, kisha devarim, and you'll see that this argument is not true. Even though you did have the Shamayim foundation, and you also did the level of ma'amad, all this does not add up to a connection that is nearly as strong as a regular kiddushin, and therefore, regular kiddushin, the husband with the father can do ma'amad, but in the yibum case, Rabbi Akiva says no, you cannot do anything. Now, b'lashon hazeh, Amar ben Azai, the Braita just adds a nice comment. Chaval alecha ben Azai shelo shimashta et Rabbi Akiva. This is what Ben Azai said when he heard this discussion. He says, wow, Rabbi Akiva, he's so brilliant, right? So woe to me. He may says to you, but since he's saying something negative, he says in the third person, woe to Ben Azai that I did not serve Rabbi Akiva properly. According to one story, at least, Ben Azai is Rabbi Akiva's son-in-law. And he studied late in life and did the same deal that Rabbi Akiva did, that she would marry him if she went and studied. But nevertheless, Ben Azai says, I should have studied more because I could have gotten these brilliant insights like this one. Okay, good. So that's the end of the Braita. Now the Gemara is going to clarify. How come? Where do you see that this Braita supports Rabbi Ameh? That we're talking about a case of ma'amar. Tekatani ben she'asa ma'amar ben she'lo asa ma'amar. Because Rabbi Akiva in his words explicitly says ma'amar. So whether he does it or doesn't, that means the previous opinions we're talking about when you do ma'amar. Good, that's one way. Or even from Rabbi Eliezer's words themselves, since in his words it says when she enters into his domain, then it becomes a full connection. Now, if he didn't do this kiddushin, if the Yavam, one of the brothers, didn't do a ma'amad, then in what way is it more full than just the shamayim level? So it must be that it is ma'amad. Okay, good. And now just the last part to finish up until next Mishnah. Mai uksha'ar devarim ken nedarim dekatane. What does it mean when the Rabbi Akiva said in his phrase, just look at all the other laws of the relationship between Yavam and Yavama, compare that to the laws between a Arus and an Arusa. What is he talking about? Amaravachi katani iatam odesh en chayvin sikila kenara orasa. Says, don't you agree that a Yevama, if she should go and sleep with someone else, she doesn't get sikila, whereas a Nara Meorasa does get sikila. So you see that the connection that Arus has with Arusa is much stronger, and that's why he can nullify her vows much stronger than that of a Yavam over a Yevama. Amar Vashe matnitin nami daika en Yevama Gemora leisha keshem she'arusa gemora leisha. Rav Asher supports Rav's explanation of the Braita based on the language in our Mishnah. Right? This Mishnah, our Mishnah and this Braita, or you can line them up side by side. And so you can use one to explain the other. And that's what Rav Asher says. In our Mishnah, instead of saying Keshat Devarim Ken Nedarim, our Mishnah says a Yevama does not have a full connection to her husband, to the Yavam. They're not husbands yet. In fact, the Mishnah says to the Yavam. So Yavama does not have a full connection to the Yavam, as much, does not have a full connection as an Arusa does have to her groom. So, right, an Arusa has a full connection because if she strays, she would get sikila, and not so a Yavama and a Yavam. And so you see that this language of the Mishnah fits also with Rava's explanation of the language of the Baraita. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen v'Amen.